Hello. Hello. The NYC LGBT Historic Sites Project is on Staten Island today. It's January 22nd, and we are here because on this day in 1990, Staten Islander Jimmy Zappalorti was murdered because he was gay. We're in Staten Island on Androvette Street, which has since been co-named Jimmy Zappalorti Lane. Jimmy Zappalorti grew up on Staten Island. He enlisted in the U.S. Navy, and while he was serving, his fellow sailors knew that he was gay, and they abused him physically and emotionally, so much so that Jimmy suffered a nervous breakdown and was discharged in 1964. He returned to Staten Island. He worked with his family at their stained glass studio here at 123 Androvette Street. But he often would make trips into Manhattan to Greenwich Village, where he felt that he could be more open about his true self and his sexuality. On January 22nd, 1990, Jimmy Zappalorti was murdered by two men because he was gay. Jimmy's murder galvanized not only his family, but further galvanized gay rights activists in the community and helped push towards achieving New York State's first hate crimes bill in 2000. The two men who murdered Jimmy Zappalorti were convicted, providing a degree of justice for him and his family, but we know for so many, so often that is not the case. And so now I'm so delighted to welcome into our live with the Anti-Violence Project to speak to us more or a little bit about the current work that AVP does to support LGBTQ plus communities. Eliel, thank you so much for being with me today.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yes. So I'm here on Staten Island. As you know, I'm here because this street is co-named for Jimmy Zappalorti, who we honor today because he was murdered because he was gay. And we know that his murderers were brought to justice, but that is not the norm for so many other LGBTQ plus people who are the targets of hate crimes. And so I would love for you to remind everybody, who are the people right now who still need us to advocate for them and speak their names and be out there to push for protection and change?
Yeah, and I want to give a little bit of context to AVP. So, the New York City Anti-Violence Project was actually formed in 1980, just 10 years before Jimmy was murdered. And we were formed in response to a string of violence against predominantly gay or queer cis men in the West Village in the Chelsea area. So it's interesting to see, that AVP was founded just 10 years beforehand, and 40 years later, we're still responding to the violence that plagues LGBTQ communities. The work has shifted and changed. AVP works to end all forms of violence and support survivors of all forms of violence. So, what we're talking today about hate violence, we also, I want to also bring up the fact that people face violence in domestic partner relationships or intimate partner relationships, and state violence as well. So when we're talking about justice for LGBTQ people, in terms of, when it comes to homicidal violence, it's been predominantly trans women of color who have faced the brunt of this violence. This past year, we saw a historic-breaking, really horrific year of homicidal violence against trans people, where at least 44 trans and gender nonconforming people were murdered in 2020, which before that, the highest level we recorded in 20-year history was 27. So it's quite shocking that during a year we're having a global pandemic and we're losing hundreds of thousands of people, we're also seeing this kind of level of violence against predominantly Black trans folks. But when we're talking about justice, I also want to just put in a little bit about ADP's position around, I use, we use the term hate violence versus hate crime. Hate crime is really tied to a very strict legal definition that doesn't really encompass the scope of yeah. So sorry, this comment I really want to raise up. You hear an SB, someone says their daughter. You hear an SB, a trans woman who was murdered in New York last year, or December 2019. We definitely want to raise her name up. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
And for commenting and naming her. But we use term that hate violence to really encompass kind of the broad scope of violence that LGBTQ people face versus hate crimes.
Okay.
And that's also because, justice looks different for different people. What does that look like? The degree of justice that Jimmy had, it's not always in convictions necessarily for people, because you can't rely on a carceral system to provide the justice that's needed as a community. But some of the names are definitely here in SP. I want to raise Pulaski Trowick, who was shot and killed in his apartment by police in April 2019. Definitely Eliel Polanco, who ABP has been supporting the family of for the past year and a half with media advocacy. There's Ashley Moore, who was murdered last year in April of 2020, in New Jersey, where there still hasn't been justice. So there are definitely countless names, and folks can go to adp.org/in memoriam to kind of remember names and lift their names up, and help push for justice for them.
And as you're talking, I'm just walking my way down Androvette Street to 123, which is the former location of the Zappalorti family's stained glass studio, where Jimmy worked when he returned home after being discharged. And so we can see outside in the sidewalk, there's a plaque. Jimmy was a Vietnam veteran. There's a plaque for him there. And also this tree, Jimmy was known to plant trees in the neighborhood. And so this tree was planted in his honor.
Wow. And
so you mentioned the advocacy that you do on behalf of so many people. I know that when I see the name Eliel Polanco now in the press, it is consistently because AVP is making sure that people do not forget that we need to continue to advocate for the kind of violence that Eliel was subjected to, the justice that eludes her. How does AVP really leverage media, its social channels, et cetera, to build a community of supporters, to educate people about what's happening in their communities, how they can help, and build a platform of support for your policy?
Yeah, I mean, Eliel Polanco's story is unique, and it's unfortunately in reality of so many trans women of color who get tied up into a carceral system that is just incredibly violent. Eliel's experience touches on so many things that ADP works on, from her being criminalized for her survival sex work to the over-policing of trans women of color who are suspected or are engaging in sex work, to bail reform and the criminalization of poverty through cash bail, to being incarcerated and then being pushed into solitary confinement because of her transness, which so many trans and gender-nonconforming people end up experiencing as facing torture because of their trans identities. So, I mean, her story just touched on so many different issues that are really important for our community, but especially on the ground, LGBTQ people and TNC people, that AVP, is also being connected to the family, have kind of tried to champion. Eliel's story, and also really kind of help do the educating piece that you're mentioning, and allowing our community to see how all of these systems are connected, and what we need to do in order to really get justice for Eliel, right? Justice for Eliel is it's not just the hiring of the correctional officers who are responsible for reducing the bill have not happened, still has not happened, but it's also ending the conditions that led her to her death. It's decriminalizing sex work. It's ending solitary confinement in New York City, which was committed but has still not happened, despite the mayor promising it would be done by October. It is ending cash bail. It is providing resources to our community's most most impacted in equitable ways, resources like housing and education and healthcare. Things that folks are need at any given point, but especially during this pandemic where people have had these resources taken away. But we, we leverage media advocacy and our social media and our supporters by doing this ongoing education over these various issues, and then utilizing the story, Laylene's story, and the story of our clients, and the stories of LGBTQ survivors as a way so that people can see the human experience behind the issues, if that makes sense.
Of course. And you mentioned early on the numbers in this last administration have been overwhelming in terms of hate violence. Thank you for giving some more depth to your language and word choice. The hate violence that's been reported was numbers that we had not previously seen. And so I'm curious, what are some of your hopes, or your what are some of your hopes for this new administration? Where do you want to see them? Where do you want to see them really direct their effort?
Yeah. So that's definitely, I also want to take a quick step back, because, while we definitely focus, while we definitely want to recognize and remember the homicidal violence that plagues our community, we've definitely also tracked that the incidents, the rate of violence that people are experiencing intensified underneath the Trump administration.
Yes.
We don't really talk about the ongoing violence that LGBTQ people face as a whole. And typically when we do, it's done in street, or as my colleague Daisha likes to say, stranger danger violence, where it's people we don't know. Yeah. It's unfortunate, and the reality is that more than likely LGBTQ people are facing violence from individuals that they know. So that whether that be their neighbors or their landlords or friends or family or coworkers, that's actually where the majority of the violence is coming from for LGBTQ people, and it's intensified underneath the Trump administration. The hopes that we have underneath the Biden administration is that we finally have a playing ground, as you could say, as an organizer, where we can actually make some change and do some pushing. There are definitely areas in which ABP does not agree with the Biden administration in terms of policy, but this is a definitely more receptible administration that will at least listen to our work and the survivors, and we definitely are going to push things around equitable COVID relief that extends, because we have to remember that LGBTQ people are also immigrants and are undocumented. But we're definitely going to push them around defunding, the police as a whole, and not encourage, increased funding for police in federal dollars, and the decriminalization of sex work and so on. But we have been, we're very excited to have this administration and to not be, faced with the onslaught of attacks that the Trump administration did for 4 very long years.
So there's nothing to do.
Sorry, Eliel, we've just been joined by somebody who's also here you're here to also honor Jimmy Zappalorti today? Wonderful. So we're the NYC LGBT Historic Sites Project, and we're here live. I'll show you.
Hi.
I
don't know if you can. Hi.
Hi.
Wow.
We are here with the Anti-Violence Project to speak about Jimmy and the ongoing work that they do. So thank you for being here.
Got it.
Well,
That's
wonderful.
I didn't realize my friend posted about it. So.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm glad that they are sharing the word and keeping his memory alive, letting people know that there's still so much work to be done. And that's really what we want to do today with this live here, is talk more about. So, Eliel, you city, right?
Sorry, you broke up for a hot second there. What was the question?
Oh, sorry. The AVP focuses primarily in New York City, correct?
Yeah, we're a New York City-based organization with a national impact. So we organize a national coalition of anti-violence programs across the country, where we have local partners who help do the data collection work around incidents of violence, of hate violence and intimate partner violence. And we, in that coalition, also can influence policy around our data. But we're a local organization with a national impact.
So I want to be respectful of time, and I want to thank people for joining us and for sharing questions and for sharing names that they want to see uplifted. But maybe in closing, if there's someone who wants to get more involved with AVP, they want to show their support, whether it's donating money, materials, what do you need right now from your community? What can we tell? How can we put people into action?
Yeah, I mean, if you go to avp.org, we post whenever we're doing campaigns work around different actions that we are, or different actionable steps that we're asking for folks, especially if you sign up to our email listserv. We definitely email when we need folks to call around various legislation or to call various levels of our government. And yeah, I mean, everything can be found on avp.org predominantly. But if folks are also like experiencing any type of physical or mental abuse themselves and are needing support, AVP's 24/7 hotline is always available in English and Spanish. It's at 212-714-1141. Folks can call from anywhere in the country really they would like to, and they can also make a report online if that makes them feel more comfortable at avp.org/report, and someone will reach back out as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all the work that you do. And enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, bye.
Bye. Bye.
We're so grateful to Eliel Cruz and the Anti-Violence Project for being with us this afternoon. If you have the opportunity, please come to 123 Androvette Street here on Staten Island. You can visit Jimmy's tree. And please find out more about how you can become involved in acknowledging and preserving historic sites that honor LGBTQ people here in the 5 boroughs, and what you can do to advocate for the communities today. Thank you so much, everyone.